Welcome back, guys. So this is officially the conclusion to the First Law trilogy and my introduction to Joe Abercrombie's writing. I am, of course, talking about The Last Argument of Kings, which is up there. I've got a few more First Law books that I bought recently, and that shelf is really hard to get to. So moving on, let's talk about the book. So this is sort of the culmination of everything that's been building in this series since The Blade itself. Obviously, The Blade itself was very foundational and character focused. You focus very much on just the branching paths of your main four characters, really, which is Glockta, Jazal, Logan. And then in book one, honestly, it focuses more on Baez a little bit. And then you get Pharaoh and Dogman and some of the other, tertiary characters that get more screen time, as it were, in book two. And then even more so in book three. So book three really expanded on all of these different character arcs in a fantastic and very effective way. And I feel like Joe Abercrombie wrapped up at least a few of these really, really well. I would say of the main cast, Jazal stands out as having the best character arc from book one to book three. Just where he started in book one is sort of this pompous prince asshole, sort of like a heightened Adolin from Stormlight Archive. He was sort of annoying, and he was sort of just not very good at a lot of things in book one or book two. He talked a lot of shit, but he couldn't really back anything up. He was sort of in over his head a lot, and so I understand why people like him, but at the same time, he just really annoyed me in the first book, and then kind of grew on me in the second book and got some comeuppance and set him straight a little bit. Book three really puts him sort of in the position that you assume that he's going to be in, but not necessarily for the reasons that you think. So that was really, really interesting, and I'll get into some spoilers as like a series wrap up here in just a couple of minutes. This first part I'm going to keep spoiler free, but I really like this character arc overall. I feel like where he ended was way better than where he started, and he was a much more likable character by the end. Leading right into Glockta, who is still my favorite and easily the most interesting character in this series so far, just because of he feels like he had the most dedication and love from Abercrombie when writing. There's so many just like mannerisms and quirks about him. It feels like he was his most realized character. Of course, he is a gigantic garbage person, former fallen soldier that, was at, the peak of the military, tortured for years, has, missing teeth, he's crippled, all of that stuff that you're introduced to him in book one. He continues to be a garbage human, but his arc really unfolds nicely, and his sort of inner workings and behind the scenes politicking and bribery and torture that he goes through in these books really leads him to an interesting place by the end of Last Argument of Kings. And I feel like the reason he was really interesting is because he sort of spends a lot of time investigating who's really controlling him and giving him orders and why, and sort of, setting him on a runaround throughout these books. So he is spending a lot of time getting to the bottom of that. And he's just a really interesting and fun character to follow because of just his dialogue, specifically the audiobook. Stephen Pacey, once again, I just knocked it out of the park for his character. I love how he brings Glockta to life, and just that sort of inner monologue in his head that he sounds out, and then the way he actually talks to people. I would equate him somewhat similarly to like a Game of Thrones show Tyrion, as far as like who you're following, and he's not necessarily a great person, but you like him because he's smart, and even when he does terrible shit, Tyrion didn't torture anybody or anything like that necessarily, but when he gets one up on people, you kind of root for him, even though he's a giant garbage person. So he was just really fun to follow, and I'm wondering if we're gonna get more out of him in the consecutive books. I have no idea where the series is going necessarily, because while this did wrap up this trilogy, there's still a lot of things that could be built off of, and I don't know which characters are going to be in the standalones. I don't know who's going to make it to Age of Madness, but Glockta is, of course, an incredibly interesting character. Logan Ninefingers, from book one to book three, actually had a lot of growth as well, and he's sort of a tortured character in a sense, because he spends a lot of time, wishing and trying to be a better person, and the world is just refusing to let it happen. For one way or, for one reason or another, it's just not going his way. The shit that he goes through, it's a lot. He also causes a lot of damage to, you know, even his close friends throughout the series. And it's just, he's not really easy to root for. I mean, you still cheer for him at some moments for getting, you know, certain things accomplished, but at the same time, he does a lot of kind of horrible shit and kills a lot of people. So he's not really the most, I don't know, chivalrous character. Baez was really interesting, and it was a little weird where his story went, in my opinion. His whole journey to the edge of the world. I don't know, the payoff for that was kind of weird. I feel like that was like my biggest sort of what's happening or negative, I guess, of this book was everything sort of surrounding Baez's plot, because it introduced a bunch of magic that I feel like was kind of off in this world a little bit. I don't know. It was cool, don't get me wrong. The finale of this book is awesome, and all the magic involved around Baez and what's his name? Mahmoud, that's his name. Just like all of the other wizard and magi characters, it's really cool, but I feel like a lot of it's super unexplained, and when everybody else is sort of like a grounded warrior type character, they don't have magic, they don't have all these special abilities. It was a little, I don't know, it didn't entirely fit to me, I guess. And that also sort of brings in Pharaoh's plotline, where she just felt like she was tagging along for a lot of this book. I actually liked her a lot in book 2. I liked that they expanded on her character and her plot with Logan and them as they were traveling. But in this book, I don't know, she just kind of felt like a plot device at times, and it just wasn't really my thing. She's a super badass character. She kills people, and she had some great lines in this. I don't know, just overall, she was one of the least interesting characters by the end of this book. Everybody else, though, as far as, you know, the entire crew of like the Dogman, Black Dow, were really fun to follow, especially in this book there's basically like almost like a siege, or they're trying to get into a castle, and just the entire dynamic between their characters, their dialogue, what's happening. It was honestly kind of pretty funny. And Joe Abercrombie did a good job of actually infusing humor into these plot lines with these characters and just sort of the situations that they're put in. And it was just one of the funnier scenes in this book overall. So I ended up enjoying a lot of their characters as well. Just their whole like group dynamic was different and fun to follow, as opposed to sort of like the single plot threads that you did have going with a lot of other characters. So, I mean, the characters make and break this story. If you can't get down with these gray characters, not great. They are great, but they're also gray. Stay with me. Some of them can be hard to root for sure. There's not a lot of good guys in this universe, it seems. But they're all really well done, and without the characters being interesting, these books would fall apart, because the plot isn't the forefront of this book. It's like this book and Before They Were Hanged have way more plot than The Blade itself, but ultimately at the end of the day, these are about the characters, and that's why they're so interesting and fun to read about, because the characters are lovable, even though most of them are pieces of crap. From a pacing perspective, this book is definitely the fastest paced of the 3. There's a lot more combat, a lot of bloodshed, and it's done really well. I think Abercrombie is pretty awesome at combat, and especially that close, sort of intimate, smaller scale combat. I mean, there are some larger battles and stuff that happen in this, but honestly, that wasn't the pinnacle of this book. There is a chapter called The Circle, and if you've read this book, you know exactly what that is. That whole chapter was a straight fire. That was awesome. It included just the bloodiest and greatest fights of this series so far, and just the entire premise of what's happening in that chapter was fantastic. So wonderfully well done. Yeah, that was good shit. One of my favorite things during the plot as well was because Glockta, like I said, is a terrible person and tortures people, but Abercrombie successfully makes him funny at times, torturing a dentist, and he's just like making teeth jokes because he's about to pull this guy's teeth, and he's laughing about how like white his teeth are and how normally the people that he tortures have bad teeth, and he goes to get his tools and he's like missing one. So then when his practical gives him like whatever the tool is to like clamp his tooth and pull it out, he's like, this one's rusty. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I'm normally better prepared for this. So it's moments like that are just awesome, because it's like, wow, like you made light of a torture scene and you made it entertaining. So And the last character, honestly, that got a lot of growth and became sort of more of a main character was Colin West. He was more so already becoming more of a focus in book 2, but book 3 he really stands out, and he grows a lot as a character and has one of the better storylines in this book as well. And he's honestly become one of the like better people in this world. So it was actually really interesting to see him grow as well. And I hope to see more of a lot of these characters, honestly. Obviously, we do lose some folks along the way in this trilogy, but I have no idea where the series goes from here. I don't know who is going to be in the standalones. I don't know exactly what the overall story arc of this series is going to end up being. This one, I guess I'll say this is a negative of this book is, and I understand the reason for it, but I personally didn't love the ending because I was just like, what? That's how it ends? Really? And if you read it, feel free to let me know if you loved it or hated it. I get, like I said, I totally get why it happened, but that for me, it was just like, like really, that's how you're gonna end the book? Come on. If you don't want spoilers, skip ahead to this time code where I will finish my review and my thoughts, but spoilers are starting right now. So overall for the spoilers, I really just want to talk about a couple of points that, Jesus Christ, the circle, that entire battle with Logan becoming the Bloody Nine, sort of at the last second when Dogman and all them they attack the witch, and she almost like murders them because she's just like, stop, and starts controlling them, and then just gets like an axe to her face. That whole scene was great, but then like just him fighting this like half invincible ogre thing was crazy, and that was just some of the best action that this series has done by far. Easily the best chapter of the trilogy in my opinion. And then just the way that, the Bloody Nine sort of takes over and just smashes the shit out of Bethod's face and like throws him off a wall. But then, Logan towards the end of this book, like as the Bloody Nine, he ends up like killing his own boys, and it's fucked up. And the way that the book ends with him falling down a cliff, I guess is fitting. I didn't love it as an ending to a book. I assume that's because he's going to come back in further novels, but just the way that it ended, I was just like, really? Come on. I really like where Glockta ended up, though. He's kind of like the hand of the king, because Giselle is the king now, but he's obviously getting his strings pulled by Baez. Baez has him by the balls, essentially. And poor Giselle thinks that he has any power when he just is so in over his head. He is not going to think for himself. Baez is there to control him. And now he has Glockta there to control him as well. And Jesus Christ. The entire Glockta marrying Artie. So first of all, the kiss. Can we talk about the kiss? Yikes. Fuck. That kiss was disgusting. But I like where he's at, because he's the reason I kind of liken him to Tyrion is because he has the political mind to be sort of a terrible backstabbing piece of garbage, and put pieces where they need to go on the board to sort of get what the king or whoever else is in charge wants. So like he's gonna listen to Baez, and as soon as Giselle is starting to think like, oh, we should do like the socialism thing, he's like, yeah, Baez probably isn't gonna like that, and you better listen to him. He's like, yeah, but I'm the king. He's like, but like, are you really? So Glockta's gonna be there to sort of run shit and make sure that Giselle does what he's supposed to while in charge. The whole like Pharaoh thing with the like stone or whatever, when she like got powers and was killing people, I don't know. Honestly, the magic is like the least interesting part of these books. And so everything with Baez, just like that whole scene of them just like obliterating all these other magi, like cool, but at the same time I was just like, it's not really doing much for me. I loved everything with Glockta's storyline, with him finding out that Salt was setting him up and just sort of giving shit back to him. Everything about Glockta and his storyline is great. I love it. But he's such a piece of garbage, man. Like blackmailing this poor lesbian that's married to Giselle into having sex with him to create an heir. Otherwise, he's gonna like torture and kill her girlfriend. It's just like, wow, Glockta, like, wow, that's tough. But I mean, it just goes to show how dark and fucked up this world is, honestly. And I want to keep reading it because it's really interesting, as terrible as a lot of these characters are. So in conclusion, I loved this book. I thought it was the best of the series, just from the pacing to the characters, their arcs that they go on, the action, just the bloodiness and the grim nature of this world was right up my alley. And I really enjoyed it overall. I like this trilogy a lot. I highly recommend that anybody who hasn't read this series definitely pick it up and give it a shot. Really strong character work. No, the plot's not really what you're there for, but that's fine. The characters are so strong and interesting, and they really grow on you. And I think they all go on pretty good character arcs throughout the series. So overall, trilogy, you know, very, very well done. I'm excited to read more. I've already picked up Best Served Cold, A Little Hatred, and The Trouble with Peace. So I will be getting through the standalones here shortly and onto The Age of Madness. So that's gonna wrap up this series. I really enjoyed it, and I think you all might too. So like and subscribe. As always, do hit up Patreon if you want to support the channel financially, and join in on some Patreon buddy reads and howler picks if you want to, where you all get to pick books that I read. And we're gonna be doing Patreon only buddy reads now as well. So that first vote has already gone in, and that will be on next month's TBR. So looking forward to that. Always optional, but always appreciated, of course. Definitely jump in Discord though, or leave me a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts overall on the First Law in general. This book specifically, what's your favorite of the trilogy? I really like to hear your thoughts and who your favorite character is, if you have one. I'm sure a lot of people like Glockta, but I like to see who doesn't like Glockta. Who do you like more? Do you like Giselle? Do you like Pharaoh? Do you like Dogman? Who do you like? Let me know. But that's gonna wrap it up, guys. So until next time, keep reading.